are the best, you have to think about a time when you've been a little bit unsure of something. Okay? Maybe you weren't really sure if you wanted to play a certain game, or you weren't really sure if you wanted to go outside with your siblings, or you weren't really sure what you wanted for dinner. Okay? But all of a sudden, someone tells you, "Oh, it's okay. Let's make up a story. Let's say we're gonna go to dinner, okay? And then you gotta choose between Chick-fil-A or Chipotle, okay? And I'm sitting there thinking, I didn't ask you. I'm sitting there thinking, man, I don't know. I really like both of them. They're both really good. I don't know which one to pick. I'm having a hard time. Well, then you say, oh, Miss Horsley, I hate Chick-fil-A. I really want Chipotle. Well, all of a sudden, now I realize that I want Chick-fil-A. Just because you told me I couldn't have it, now I realize that I want it. Have you ever had that happen before?
Yeah.
Okay. You're stuck between two decisions. You can't decide. You're not sure what to do. They both seem okay, but the minute someone tells you you can't have one of them, that's the one you want. You know what I'm talking about? Okay. Kind of keep that scenario in mind as we read about Meg making her decision with Mr. March, with Mr. Brooke. Let me put this over here. I moved it. Ew. Okay, chapter 23. Aunt March settles the question. Yes. The next day, mother and daughters hovered around Mr. March, neglecting everything to wait upon and listen to the new invalid. As he sat propped up in a big chair by Beth's sofa, with the three other close by, and Hannah popping her head in now and then to peek at the dear man, nothing seemed needed to complete their happiness. But something was needed, although none confessed the fact. Mr. and Mrs. March looked at one another with an anxious expression as their eyes followed Meg. Jo was seen to be shaking her fists at Mr. Brooks' umbrella, which had been left in the hall. Meg was absent-minded, shy, and silent, started when the bell rang, and blushed when John's name was mentioned. Okay, so now that Mr. Brooks is back, Mr. March is back, Meg is now realizing first of all, Mr. Brooks is there now, and she knows how he feels about her. Everybody else, most people, know also that he has already asked Mr. and Mrs. March permission to marry her or to even date her. Okay? So everyone's kind of waiting to see what is Meg going to say. Does she like him? Is she going to say yes? What's going to happen? I don't know. Is he going to ever ask her out on a date? It's just everyone's kind of watching to see what happens. Okay? Except for Jo. Jo is still angry. Lori went by in the afternoon, and, seeing Meg at the window, he fell down on one knee in the cold snow and clasped his hands imploringly. And when Meg told him to go away, he staggered around the corner as if in utter despair. Okay? So he's picking on her. Okay? He sees Meg and he falls down on his knees like, please, Meg, marry me. Like making fun of Mr. Brooks. And Meg's like, oh, go away. What does that goose mean? Said Meg, laughing and trying to look unaware. Oh, he's showing you how your John will go on by and by. That's touching, isn't it? Answered Jo scornfully. Don't call him my John, for it isn't proper or true. But Meg's voice lingered over the words as if they sounded pleasant to her. Please don't plague me, Jo. I've told you I don't care much about him, and we are all to be friendly and just go on as before. Yeah, well, we can't do that, for Laurie's mischief has spoiled you for me. You're not like your old self one bit, and you seem ever so far away from me. I don't mean to plague you, but I do wish it all was just settled. I hate to wait. So if you mean ever to do it, make haste and have it all over quickly, said Jo nervously. Well, I can't say anything until he speaks, and he won't talk to me because Father said I was too young, began Meg, with a queer little smile which suggested that she did not quite agree with him. Oh, even if he did speak to you, you wouldn't know what to say, but you would just cry or blush or let him have his own way instead of giving him a good decided no. Not at all. I should say quietly, calmly, and decidedly, "Thank you, Mr. Brooke. You are very kind, but I agree with father that I am too young to enter into an engagement at present. So please say no more, but let us be friends as we were." You think Meg would really say that?
No.
She might be like, "Oh yeah."
No.
So Joe says, I guess that's stiff and cool enough. I don't believe you'll ever say it, and I know he won't be satisfied if you do. You'll give in, rather than hurt his feelings. No, I won't. I shall tell him I've made up my mind, and I shall walk out of the room with dignity.
No.
Meg rose and was just going to rehearse the dignified exit when a step in the hall made her fly into her seat and begin to sew as fast as if her life depended on finishing that particular scene. Joe smothered a laugh and opened the door with a grim aspect which was anything but hospitable. Good afternoon. I came to get my umbrella. That is, to see how your father finds himself feeling today," said Mr. Brooke, getting a trifle confused as his eyes went from one telltale face to the other. "It's very well. He's in the rack. I'll get him, and I'll tell it you're here." And having jumbled up her father and the umbrella together in her reply, she meant to say, "He's very well, and it's in the rack." The "it" being the umbrella, the "he" being her father. Instead, she said, "Your umbrella's very well, and father's in the rack. Hold on. I'll get him, and I'll tell it you're here." No. I'll get it, and I'll tell him you're here. Forget it. And she walked off. But Joe slipped out of the room to give Meg a chance to make her speech and air her dignity. But the instant Joe vanished, Meg began to sidle toward the door, murmuring, "Mother will like to see you. Pray, sit down. I will call her." "Wait, don't go. Are you afraid of me, Margaret?" said Mr. Brooke, looking hurt. That her real name is Margaret. He's like, "Wait, hold on. Are you afraid of me? You won't talk. You won't even look at me." Meg blushed all the way up to the little curls on her forehead, for he had never called her Margaret before, and she was surprised to find how natural and sweet it seemed to hear him say it. Anxious to appear friendly and at her ease, she put out her hand with a confiding gesture and said gratefully, "Well, how could I be afraid when you've been ever so kind to my father? I only wish that I could thank you for it." "Shall I tell you how?" said Mr. Brooke.
Oh my God.
Holding the small hand fast in both his own, and looking down at Meg with so much love in the brown eyes that her heart began to flutter. "Oh no, please don't. I'd rather not," she said, trying to withdraw her hand and looking frightened. "I won't trouble you. I only want to know if you care for me just a little bit, Meg. I love you so much, my dear," added Mr. Brooke tenderly. All right, well, listen to what happened. This is funny. This was the moment for that calm, clear speech, but Meg didn't make it. She forgot every word of it, hung her head, and answered, I don't know," so softly that John had to stoop down to catch the foolish little reply. So, here's what Meg intended to do. "No, Mr. Brooke. I agree with father. I am too young to be engaged in this sort of thing, and I thank you, but I wish to be friends." But instead, the moment comes and she's like, "I don't know." Pretty funny. Let me finish. He smiled to himself as if quite satisfied, and said in his most persuasive tone, "Well, will you please try and find out?" I want to know so much, for I can't go to work with any heart until I learn whether I am to have my reward in the end or not. Well, I'm too young, faltered Meg, wondering why she was so flustered yet rather enjoying it. Well, I'll wait. And in the meantime, you could be learning to like me. Would that be a very hard lesson, dear? Well, not if I chose to learn it, but well, then please choose to learn, Meg. I love to teach, and this is much easier than German, broke in John, taking her other hand so that she had no way of hiding her face as he bent to look into it. Mr. Brooks very smooth.
Yeah.
he's like, you think this would be a hard lesson? Much easier than learning to love me is a lot easier than learning German.
I'm gonna get you.
A sly little dog. Meg stole a shy look at him and saw that his eyes were merry as well as tender, and that he wore the satisfied smile of one who had no doubt of his success. This bothered her, it nettled her, and the love of power, which sleeps in the bosoms of the best of little women, woke up all of a sudden and took possession of her. She felt excited and strange, and not knowing what else to do, withdrew her hands, saying petulantly, I don't choose. Please, go away and let me be. Now, does she really not like him? No. What she doesn't like is the fact that she can feel herself starting to like him. She's like, I don't want, I'm not going to give him what he wants. I'm going to play hard to get. Poor Mr. Brooke looked as if his castle in the air was tumbling about his ears. Meg, do you really mean that? He asked anxiously, following her as she walked away. Yes, I do. I don't want to be worried about such things. Father says I needn't, for it's too soon, and I'd rather not. Well, may not I hope that you'll change your mind by and by? I'll wait, and I'll say nothing until you've had more time. Don't play with me, Meg. I didn't think that of you. He's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. If that's really what you want, then be sure. So I don't want to do this back and forth stuff. If you like me, just say so. If you need more time, I'll wait. But don't tell me you don't like me now and then change your mind tomorrow. He's like, I don't want to go back and forth. Don't play with me. I didn't think you would do that. Well, don't think of me at all. I rather you wouldn't, said Meg, taking a naughty satisfaction in trying her lover's patience and her own power. She was enjoying having kind of pulling with Mr. Brooks' emotions. Do you see what I'm saying? She's kind of playing with him. Like, ooh, he loves me so much I can make him upset. Watch this. And she's enjoying having all this power. She's pushing lots of buttons, yeah. That's a great way to put it. He was grave and pale now, and stood looking at her so wishfully, so tenderly, that she found her heart relenting in spite of herself. What would have happened next, I cannot say, if Aunt March had not come hobbling in at this interesting minute. The old lady could not resist her longing to see her nephew, for she had met Laurie as she took her airing, and hearing of Mr. March's arrival, drove straight out to see him. The family were all busy in the back part of the house, and she had made her way quietly in, hoping to surprise them. Well, she did surprise two of them, so much so that Meg started as if she had seen a ghost, and Mr. Brooke vanished into the study. Well, bless me, what's all this? Cried the old lady with a rap of her cane, as she glanced from the pale young gentleman to the scarlet young lady. Oh, this is father's friend. I'm so surprised to see you, stammered Meg, feeling that she was in for a lecture just now. She's like, I'm surprised to see you. And Aunt March says, well, that's obvious. That's evident, returned Aunt March, sitting down. But what is father's friend saying to make you look like a peony, like a very red flower? There's mischief going on here, and I insist upon knowing what it is, she asked with another rap. Well, we were only just talking. Mr. Brooke came for his umbrella," began Meg, wishing that Mr. Brooke and his umbrella were safely out of the house. "Brooke? That boy's tutor? Ah, I understand now. I know all about it. Joe blundered into a wrong message in one of your father's letters, and I made her tell me about it." "You haven't gone and accepted him, child," cried Aunt March, looking scandalized. How did Aunt March find out about Mr. Brooks' feeling for Meg? Layla? Well, yeah. Joe kind of slipped up a little bit. She was maybe reading one of her father's letters to Aunt March and said, "Mr. Brooke has asked to..." Oh, and then tries to skip it. But Aunt March said, "No, no, no, go back. What about Mr. Brooke?" And then Joe had to tell her. "You haven't gone and accepted him, child," cried Aunt March, looking scandalized. Scandalized? Like, there's no way. Are you kidding? The tutor? He's not rich. You can't marry him.
Oh, okay. I was wondering, like, you haven't married him? Like, what?
Hush. He'll hear. "Shan't I call for Mother?" said Meg, much troubled. Not yet. I have something to say to you, and I must free my mind at once. Tell me, do you mean to marry this cook? If you do, not one penny of my money is ever going to you. Remember that, and be a sensible girl," said the old lady impressively. Now, Aunt March was able to rouse the spirit of opposition in the gentlest of people, and she enjoyed doing it. If the old lady had begged Meg to accept John Brooke, she would probably have declared that she couldn't think of it. Pause. So, if Aunt March had said, "Oh, please accept Mr. Brooke's hand," Meg would have been like, "I don't think so." Okay? Aunt March had this way of making you do exactly the opposite of what she wanted. She didn't do it on purpose. She really wanted one thing, but she was so annoying that you wanted to do the exact opposite. So, now that she's saying, "Don't you dare marry that Mr. Brooke," all Meg wants to do is marry Mr. Brooke. But, since she was ordered not to like him, she immediately made up her mind that she would. And being already much excited, Meg opposed the old lady with an unusual spirit. Now, let's listen to... Look, Meg takes a stand for herself. Ain't nobody ever stand up to Aunt March. But look what Meg said. "I shall marry who I please, Aunt March, and you can leave your money to anyone you like," she said, nodding her head with a resolute air. "Well, highty-tighty, is that the way you take my advice, miss? You'll be sorry for it by and by when you've tried love in a cottage and found it to be a failure."
She's like the wicked old witch.
Y'all are ended up with homework if you don't stop. "Well, it can't be worse than the ones some people find in big houses," retorted Meg. Aunt March put on her glasses and took a look at the girl, for she did not know her in this new mood. Meg hardly knew herself. She felt so brave and independent, so glad to defend John and her right to love him if she liked. Aunt March saw that she had begun wrong, and after a little pause made a fresh start, saying as mildly as she could, "Now, Meg, my dear, be reasonable and take my advice. I mean it kindly, and I don't want you to spoil your whole life by making a mistake at the beginning. You ought to marry well. It's your duty to make a rich match and help your family. Father and Mother don't think so. They like John, even though he's poor." Aunt March took no notice, but went on with her lecture. "This Rook hasn't got any rich relations, has he?" "No, but he has many warm friends." "Oh, you can't live on friends. Try it, and see how cool they'll grow." He hasn't any businesses, has he? Well, not yet. So you intend to marry a man without money, position, or business, and go on working harder than you do now, when you might be comfortable all your days by just minding me and doing better? I thought you had more sense, Meg. Meg says, I couldn't do better than Mr. Brooke if I waited half my life. John is good and wise. He's got heaps of talent. He's willing to work and sure to get on. He's so energetic and brave. Everyone likes and respects him. And I'm proud to think that he cares for me, even though I'm so poor and young and silly, said Meg, looking prettier than ever in her earnestness. He knows you've got rich relations, child. That's the secret of his liking you, I suspect. She says, honey, he doesn't like you because of who you are. He likes you because you have rich relatives. That's probably why he's interested in you.
No, you don't.
Aunt March, how dare you say such a thing? John is above such meanness, and I won't listen to you a minute if you talk so, cried Meg indignantly. My John wouldn't marry for money any more than I would. We are willing to work, and we mean to wait. I'm not afraid of being poor, for I've been happy so far, and I know I shall be with him because he loves me, and I... Meg stopped there. No, listen. Meg stopped there, remembering all of a sudden that she hadn't ever made up her mind, that she had told her John to go away, and that he might be overhearing her inconsistent remarks. So here she is she's getting all mad and flustered and angry and defending Mr. Brooke. He's a good man. My John would never do that. And all of a sudden she stops and realizes, wait, my John? I told him I didn't want to talk to him anymore. I better go fix that. Aunt March was very angry, for she had set her heart on having her pretty niece make a fine match, and something in the girl's happy young face made the lonely old woman feel both sad and sour. Well then, I wash my hands of this whole affair. You are a willful child. I'm disappointed in you, and haven't the spirits to see your father now. Don't expect anything from me when you're married. Your Mr. Brooks' friends must take care of you now. I'm done with you forever. And Aunt March stormed off, slamming the door in Meg's face. Meg stood for a moment, undecided whether to laugh or cry. But before she could make up her mind, she was taken possession of by Mr. Brooke, who said all in one breath, I couldn't help but overhearing Meg. Thank you for defending me, and Aunt March for proving that you do care for me a little bit. Well, I didn't know how much I cared for you until she abused you, began Meg. So, and I needn't go away, but I can stay and be happy, may I, dear? Here was another fine chance to make that exit, to make the crushing speech and the stately exit. But Meg never thought of doing either, and meekly whispered, Yes, John, hiding her face in Mr. Brooks' waistcoat. 15 minutes after Aunt March's departure, Joe came softly downstairs, paused an instant at the parlor door, and, hearing no sounds within, nodded and smiled with a satisfied expression, saying to herself, she's seen him away just as we planned, and that affair is settled. I'll go and hear the fun and have a good laugh over it. But so Joe comes up to the door, doesn't hear them talking, and is like, oh yeah, she's done it already. She sent him away just like she said she was going to. And she walked in like right here, so how'd it go? And she sees the both of them there. But poor Joe never got her laugh, for she was transfixed upon the threshold by a spectacle which held her there, staring with her mouth nearly as wide open as her eyes, just like that. Her formerly strong-minded sister sat enthroned upon her lover's knee, wearing an expression of the most abject submission. Joe gave a sort of gasp, as if a cold shower bath had suddenly fallen upon her, for such an unexpected turning of the tables actually took her breath away. At the odd sound, the lovers turned and saw her. Meg jumped up, looking both proud and shy, but that man, as Joe called him, actually laughed and said coolly, as he kissed the astonished newcomer, "My sister, Joe! Come congratulate us!" Well, that was altogether too much, and making some wild demonstration with her hands, Joe vanished without a word. Rushing upstairs, she burst into the invalid's room, exclaiming tragically, "Somebody go downstairs quick! John Brooke is acting dreadfully, and Meg likes it!" Mr. and Mrs. March left the room with speed, and casting herself upon the bed, Joe cried. Nobody ever knew what went on in the parlor that afternoon, but a great deal of talking was done, and quiet Mr. Brooke astonished his friends by the spirit with which he pleaded his suit, told his plans, and persuaded them to arrange everything just as he wanted it. The tea bell rang before he had finished describing the paradise which he meant to earn for Meg, and he proudly took her in to supper, both looking so happy that Joe hadn't the heart to be jealous or dismal. Amy was very much impressed by John's devotion and Meg's dignity. Beth beamed at them from a distance, while Mr. and Mrs. March surveyed the young couple with tender satisfaction. No one ate much, but everyone looked very happy, and the old room seemed to brighten up amazingly with the first romance of the family. "You can't say anything pleasant never happens now, can you, Meg?" said Amy, trying to decide how she would group the lovers in a sketch she was planning to make. "No, I'm sure I can't. Oh, how much has happened since I said that. It seems like a year ago," answered Meg, who was in a blissful dream. "I hope the next year will end better," muttered Joe, who found it very hard to see Meg absorbed in a stranger. "I hope the third year from this will end even better. I mean, it shall end better, if I live to work out my plans," said Mr. Brooke, smiling at Meg as if everything had become possible to him now. "Doesn't it seem like a very long time to wait?" asked Amy, who was in a hurry for the wedding. "Oh no, I've got so much to learn before I shall be ready. It seems a short time to me," answered Meg, with a sweet gravity in her face never seen there before. "You have only to wait. I am to do the work," said John, with an expression which caused Joe to shake her head. As the front door banged, Joe said to herself with an air of relief, "Here comes Laurie. Now we shall have some sensible conversation." Okay.
Wait, what? A great graduation for Mrs. John Brooke?
But Joe was mistaken, for Laurie came prancing in, overflowing with good spirits, bearing a great bridal-looking bouquet for Mrs. John Brooke.
I don't get it.
I knew he's bringing her like a gift, knowing that she was going to accept. It's like a congratulations bouquet.
Wait, this is Mrs. John Brooke.
Right. So when two people get married, the woman is introduced as Mrs. her husband's name. So usually it's Mr. and Mrs. John Brooke.
Is John Brooke his last name? Or is
Oh, I thought it was just last.
Yeah.
So that's not actually her name. But when you first introduce them as a couple, you introduce them as Mr. and Mrs. the husband's name. When they get married, her name will be Mrs. Meg Brooke.
Not Mrs. Meg Margaret. Wait.
Go ahead, Riley.
It says Mrs. Meg.
I I knew Brooke would have it all his own way. He always does. For when he makes up his mind to accomplish anything, it's done, even if the sky falls," said Laurie, when he had presented his offering and his congratulations. As the little party adjourned to the parlor to greet Mr. Lawrence, Laurie followed Joe into a corner. "You don't look very festive, ma'am. What's the matter?" he asked. "I don't approve of the match, but I shall not say a word against it," said Joe solemnly. "You can't even know how hard it is for me to give up my Meg," she continued with a little quiver in her voice. "I've just lost my dearest friend."
You still got that.
"Well, you've got me anyhow. I'm not good for much, I know, but I'll stand by you, Joe, all the days of my life. Upon my word, I will." And Laurie meant what he said. "I know you will. You are always a great comfort to me, Teddy," returned Joe, gratefully shaking hands. "Well, now, don't be dismal. That's a good fellow. It's all right, you see. We'll have capital times after Meg in her own little house, for I shall be through college before long, and then we'll go abroad on some nice trip or other. Wouldn't that console you?" "Well, I rather think it would, but there's no knowing what may happen in 3 years," said Joe thoughtfully. "Well, that's true. Don't you wish you could take a look forward and see where we all shall be then?" "I do," returned Laurie. "Oh, I think not, for I might see something sad, and everyone looks so happy now. I don't believe they could be much improved." And Joe's eyes went slowly around the room, brightening as they looked, for the prospect was a pleasant one. Father and mother sat together, quietly reliving the first chapter of their romance, which for them began some 20 years ago. Amy was drawing the lovers, who sat apart in a beautiful world of their own, the light of which touched their faces with a grace the little artist could not copy. Beth lay on her sofa, talking cheerily with her old friend, who held her little hand as if he felt that it possessed the power to lead him along the peaceful way she walked. Joe lounged in her favorite low seat with the grave, quiet look which best became her, and Laurie, leaning on the back of her chair, his chin on a level with her curly head, smiled with his friendliest aspect, and nodded at her in the long glass which reflected them both. And so the curtain falls upon Meg, Joe, Beth, and Amy. Whether it ever rises again depends upon the reception given to the first act of the domestic drama called Little Women.
Did you just end it like that?
This is only the first book.
So, yes, there is a part 2 to Little Women that the author wrote. It continues the story of Meg, Joe, Beth, and Amy, but we don't read it.
What's it
What?
called?
It's Little Women Part 2.